to welcome all of you and our panelists to our panel discussion of education in Washington County. Education broadly defined, as we said in some of the emails prior to this meeting, not just public school, not just K-12, not even just K-14, 16, whatever you want to call it, but all of the ways in which people learn and grow throughout their lifetimes, all of which is super important and underlies our democratic ideals here in this county and this country. So we have with us Caren Cramer, who is the Executive Director of the Washington County Education Foundation, Washington County Public Schools Education Foundation. I always forget the PS in there. And Paul Frey, who is a returner, actually, and was here in his Chamber of Commerce role recently, but now is here as the Vice President of the Board, right, for OnTrack Washington County. So rather than explaining to everyone what those things are, I would like to ask you guys to do that, starting with Caren. You can just say a little bit about your organization and its role in Washington County.
Thank you for having me here tonight. The Washington County Public School Education Foundation has been in existence for 10 years. If you haven't heard about it, we would like to change that. In the 10 years it's been in existence, it has become its own 501c3 standalone nonprofit. Our primary client is, of course, the Washington County Public Schools, and we raise funds for programs that aren't typically covered by the curriculum or instructional budgets for the school system. With those funds raised or raising on our own through fundraisers, we try to return the investment into the classroom as much as possible. For the last 10 years, about $15,000 a year has gone back to classroom teachers in the form of innovative grants. Recently, it was changed from a mini grant program to an innovative grant program with the influx of some contributions that afford us a maxi grant category. So we have both maxi and mini grants, and we have two curriculum-based programs, I would call it. One that's been in existence for about 5 years is our GLOW Financial Literacy Program, which is currently in several of the high schools, and we're under the impression that this year that's supposed to roll out to middle schools, so we're waiting to hear, now that the teachers are back, exactly how that's going to work. But it's a program that utilizes community volunteers and members of the financial and business community to help come in and mentor that curriculum in classrooms. The middle school component apparently is a bit more tricky because it has to fit with standards. So they're trying to find where, not just in math, some of that fits. So they're going into the social studies realm and possibly even into some of the English or literature realm to reach some of those topics. But we'll get to those nuts and bolts once we know more from the school system what exactly they expect from us this year. The other program has been in existence for just a year. It's called Super Readers. Again, it's a community volunteer program where community volunteers one-on-one work at, right now, any of 3 elementary schools, Pangbourne, Paramount, and McKay Dowd. Our community volunteers work one-on-one with individual students that have been identified by teachers as reading below grade level. So we're starting with last year 2nd and 1st graders. I think this year it's going to be 1st and kindergartners in those 3 schools. We hope by mid-year to be able to roll it out to another 2 schools. So with a lot of community support, not only in money, but in time and resources, we're very excited to be a part of the community.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
OnTrack.
So OnTrack, Washington County, is in its almost 3rd year of its existence. It was the brainchild of Greater Hagerstown Committee, and it's a birth to college or career initiative. And we started about 3 years ago thinking, what can we do to enhance the education process in Washington County? And as you said, it's just not public sector, it's all partners that have to do with education, including the private sector, because we think it's a workforce development issue in the private sector. As of 2 weeks ago, we gained our nonprofit status for a 501c3, and our job at OnTrack is to work with the community in partnership. We have over 40 partners right now to help educate our students of today so that when they graduate from high school or get out of college, that they can be in a job or career that they can support themselves and their family. And so we work with such things as college education, blue collar STEM, community college. Our goal is how can we get students so they can get into a career they like. And we start at birth. We have a number of initiatives that we can talk about. That's what OnTrack is.
Wonderful, thank you. So I guess let's start with the low-hanging fruit, right? What do you feel like we're doing really well in Washington County in terms of education? And again, I know Caren, you're speaking from a largely K-12 perspective, but feel free to go beyond the scope of what WCPS Education Foundation officially deals with, because of course there's a domino effect, right? Everything affects everything else. And Paul, that is a huge question in terms of the whole spectrum
Sure.
of education across life. But if you had to pick 2 or 3 things to focus on and say, yeah, Washington County really nailed it on this one, what would they be? So let's start with you this time, Paul.
Big collaboration. Again, we have over 40 partners, and we have one for every one of you. I think if you don't know what OnTrack is, this is a good primer for OnTrack. And like Caren with her foundation, we're trying to educate more people about the program. It talks about the partners and what we're trying to do. So I think number one is collaboration. The students are all of our customers. So whether it be public sector, private sector, nonprofits, the students are really our concern. How do we get them educated so they have a career to their liking and they can support themselves? And then I think the second thing we have going for us is we have a lot of smart people in our community. We have a lot of smart people in this room. We have a lot of smart people on our board. So not only do we have collaboration, we have the right people at the table, and we're always looking for more input. So I think those are 2 good things we have going for us here in Washington County that a number of other counties I don't think can say.
Caren, what would you add?
I have to just preface this by saying some of what I'm going to say is going to come from the perspective of my non-executive director role. I have 2 children who graduated from Washington County Public Schools. I was a substitute teacher for a while in Washington County. I've been on the FIAC committee for 3 sessions now, so through the last 2 redistricts. So I guess not just wearing my executive director hat, but wearing my citizen hat, I think one of the things Washington County Public Schools and in the county in general is, as Paul said, collaboration is really key. We are fortunate enough to partner with OnTrack on a Breaking Barriers, Making Connections project, which I think speaks to some of the challenges around our area. We sometimes don't know what's in our way to get through things, so if we can work in a collaborative way to identify some of those, we put ourselves ahead of the game a little bit. I don't know, I mean, there's a lot that they do well.
I agree.
So I think as the executive director of the foundation, things that I know we would like to do better is to be able to find those programs and projects that will enhance the educational experience and the opportunities that our children have or don't have and we would like them to have. So I think certainly always with an eye to the future is a good trait to have.
Okay.
And let me add, my wife and I have 3 adult daughters. Our oldest daughter and husband teach in Frederick County Schools. She teaches 4th grade, he teaches 5th grade. He was teacher of the year in Frederick County a few years ago. Our middle daughter is a counselor at elementary school in Frederick County. And our youngest daughter is taking a little bit of a break from teaching, but she's bilingual in Spanish. She taught for a few years. Her husband is a science teacher, a math teacher in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So, I mean, education is important.
Right.
And like all of you, I had great teachers along the way, and I could have gone a different path. And I was a handful of the student, as I said here earlier. I'm on a number 8 of 10 kids, and I thought chaos was normal. So when I go to school, I thought being disruptive and being chaotic, that was normal because everyone did that. But of course, that's not how it's supposed to be. And so I've had a number of teachers over the years that saved me from a different path and put me on the right path. And so, I'll answer on track. I'll also answer from, personally and just from my experience as a student, the importance of education and being able to educate every single person to their level what they can and want to do. because if you've been in school longer than 10 minutes, you see there's a lot going on, and teachers have a lot of pressure on them today, and public school as well. So.
Right. Yeah, and that's a thing that makes education maybe a little bit different from a lot of other professions, right? Like I've never really had anything to do with the Chamber of Commerce, but I've been to school, right? So like everybody feels like they know something about education, which has its upsides and its downsides a little bit.
One would hope it's the great equalizer, but
right.
we're still getting there.
Well, so let's talk about that. That's one of the things I wanted to ask both of you. So equity in education is a big issue, right? Across the country, maybe across the world. It's extremely difficult to identify barriers, as you mentioned, to equity in education. We do a pretty good job, I think, with equity and access, but we are doing a much less of a good job with equity and outcomes. And so I guess I just wanted to ask both of you from your perspectives, how is Washington County faring in terms of educational equity, and why? Caren, you want to start?
What started me being an active parent, more so than just attending PTA meetings, was that I knew of programs elsewhere in Washington County schools that weren't in the school my children were in, and I didn't understand why. I sometimes still don't to this day understand why, but I've learned a bit more about it, and some of those have rectified themselves over the years. The instance for me was not having instrumental music in elementary school. It seemed completely oblique to growing an individual in a very healthy environment, but yet the recorder doesn't quite cut it as just the only musical instrument kids should be exposed to in elementary school. So that was sort of my first foray. That has clearly resolved itself, even though some schools, the smaller ones, have part-time instrumental teachers. I agree it's not a full-time teacher equal to that of another larger school, but they have the opportunity to take instrumental language. In the broader sense, I know that there are issues that still to this day exist. I know that after-school activities would be a lot better attended by kids if they had an after-school bus, like the Hagerstown-centric schools have, that the outlying schools don't have. A lot of parents are dual income houses. Their kids can't always count on a ride home, or they're not old enough to be able to drive themselves. So there's still some level of inequities that are going to exist. We as a foundation, we as parents, we as citizens, need to try to look at how that's working and see if there's a way to address it. So with every criticism, I think there are positives that have been made in making things a bit more equitable, but I still think that there's room for improvement.
And so does the foundation have its kind of eye on any particular thing?
I can't say that when I started 7 months ago they did. We started a new fiscal year in July. There are some strategic initiatives we're looking into. Most of them are still at this point curriculum based, but if we can look at ways of tackling some of the non-instructional challenges, I think that would be a really positive thing.
Okay.
So here's where I plead ignorance.
Okay.
I'm not sure of all the inequities. Obviously there are some, and I think, but from OnTrack's perspective, our job is to bring people to the table. So some things Karen's talking about, we can address with board members, with our partners. So, one thing, whether it's inequity or not, there's an apprenticeship program that's available in the state of Maryland, and that's open to public schools, to anybody in a public school, junior, senior. So that's open to anybody. It's a very easy process to get some work with an employer participates. I think one other program we're doing, again, I didn't look at it this way, but to level out the inequity, is our 7th grade career exploration day. Every 7th grade in Washington County the last 2 years has gone to HCC, and all 1,600 students get to experience 2 careers. And they can pick whatever careers they want. We try to give them a choice, anywhere from law enforcement to physician to plumbing, you name it. We had almost 100 presenters this year. So that's one way of leveling the playing field. What are the opportunities? And I think a missing link is to keep the parents engaged, so let them know what's available for their kids, at different levels. And again, whether it be dual income parents or single parents, I know it's a challenge. So I think education awareness is a way to help level the playing field. It's been my experience. Don't have the experience you do in Washington County, Karen. It's been my experience. If there's someone willing to do something, we have an opportunity. I mean, we have lots of people in the community through networking to say, can you help this student? Can you help this parent? It's a matter of finding it out and letting parents and students know if you have a question or a problem, ask somebody. So OnTrack is hopefully a no wrong door type of organization with our partners we have. So that's, again, I believe ignorance about the specific inequities, but I do know there is a desire to address them from the superintendent all the way down to, the parent with the students. That's been my experience.
So OnTrack works in tandem, collaboratively with Washington County Public Schools?
Yeah, Dr. Michael is on our board, a number of the superintendents, or a number of the directors on our board, so we work together with them and support. They lead in how to educate children because that's not expertise, but we help with what are the resources you need. Our outreach is to this community to help support.
So you do work in tandem?
Absolutely. I think collaboration is better versus tandem.
Yeah.
Because, again, all these partners have different initiatives.
And not just with the public school system, correct? I mean,
County
OnTrack,
government, city government,
right.
Private sector,
Well, and
parents,
workforce development programs and all
the
sorts
state
of
with
other,
apprenticeships.
right. So it's that's the piece I was missing.
And again, I'll leave each one have these. It explains it in pretty good detail who the partners are we're trying to accomplish. So I think collaboration,
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's a good segue to talk about sort of the purpose of education up to, at least before adulthood, let's say, or into young adulthood perhaps, because you hear a lot, and I also am a parent in the system. One of my children is here tonight. You hear a lot about college and career readiness, right? And I'm a faculty member in higher education, so I have all sorts of opinions about college readiness, and I'm a parent, so I have all sorts of opinions about, well, everything, but in particular careers. And those are really different things, right? College readiness and career readiness are quite different. And so I guess I'm interested in from a workforce development type standpoint, because you said that sort of OnTrack's big thing is like, yes, let's support education because we understand that an educated populace is critical if we're going to have a healthy economy, basically, right? But what does that education need to look like? Is college for everyone a good goal to have?
No. So when we say education, it could be certification. We're talking about careers. And so you go to a number of careers with college or some sort of certification. And I think there's a chart in here that says 30 years ago, Washington County, you could make a good middle income living with a high school degree or a GED. You can raise a family, you can live comfortably,
Sure.
have a house, 2 cars, send your kids to college if they wanted. So 30 years later now, in the 21st century, it's changed. Probably not very many high school graduates can make a middle income living these days because the economy's changed based on technology, based on all kinds of issues. And so what we're suggesting on OnTrack is we want cradle to career. So what's your career? You want to be a doctor? Well, you have to go to college and med school. If you want to be a plumber, well, you have to get some sort of certification. And to be a plumber, you have to be pretty sharp too. So you have to use math. You have to know how to measure things. You have to know about the environment. And so we're suggesting if there's a career, what steps you have to take through a career. There are a number of Tech High students who can make $60,000 or $70,000 going to the IT field just based on their high school classes they're taking, their certifications. And so what we're suggesting is, how can you make a living doing what you like to do and being successful? And it could be college, it could be community college, it could be certification. Potomac Edison, you go to lineman school, and part of that is you get a 2-year degree, but you learn how to climb a power line and chase after $65,000 a year without overtime.
So do you think, given all of that, and Caren, I want you to respond here in a minute, but I want to follow up on this, that there is an excessive focus on college?
I think excessive, for me, I think there's not enough focus on other opportunities. I think college is important for certain people, but you mentioned your higher ed. At some point, we got to figure out what it costs to go to college these days, and you come out and have this debt, and can you get a job to pay for it? So part of it is making it okay if folks don't want to go to college. Well, what are you going to do to pay the bills? If you're not going to go to college, what does that look like? And I think there's a mindset that if my son or daughter doesn't go to college, he or she is not a success. Or, I know, if my son or daughter wants to go to college, I'm not sure we can afford it. Because I think there's opportunities for both ways. So I don't know if your thoughts are, Caren.
Speaking from my parent role, certainly all of us as parents want our children to have the skills to be successful in whatever it is they choose to pursue. And sometimes K through 12 education is enough to get them to where they've decided what it is they want to do. But not every high school junior knows what they want to be by the time they're a high school junior. And oftentimes that sort of unknown can be treated either in a very positive way or not so positive way. And I know a lot of it these days falls to our high school counselors to help kids figure that out. I'm not so sure where the parents are in that. Maybe it's the counselors and parents somewhat. I do think having a goal throughout a child's life is important. Learning is important. Lifelong learning is critical to all of us.
So when you say a goal, you mean the goal of education?
The goal of education and being that sponge that it takes to have an education. Because if you're simply going by and going to classes and not really letting it absorb, it's not of great value to anyone. I happen to have one of each of these kinds of kids out of the two that I have. My oldest, my daughter, loved learning from the age of 3, wanted to be a teacher all of her life. She's not a teacher now, but she's going to be working with kids. Went to college, loved it, excelled, boom. My son struggled a lot through school. Wasn't necessarily strictly behavior issues, possibly could have been. All of those little things that happened to him through school were very different from what happened to her. He wanted to go to college, but his academic career didn't say he wanted to go to college. So we were faced with what do you want to do? So he wants to be a baseball professional umpire. So how does one do that? Well, in the meantime, let's at least work on the lifelong learning aspect and go to HCC. So he's gotten his associate's degree, and he has now learned what steps he needs to take to try to become a professional baseball umpire, and he's excelling. And for the first time in his almost 21 years, he's feeling confident about himself, but it all came somewhat after school.
But do you think, so to what extent, and we could go down a rabbit hole here and I'll try to avoid it, but that sounds like a failure of the school system, to be honest with you, right? That there's one way to learn, and if you don't learn that way, then sorry.
I don't disagree with you at all. Today at the central office building, they had a kickoff for their employee giving campaign, and I heard someone say they're trying to take square pegs and put them in round holes, and it just doesn't work for everyone. Right? I don't know if that's strictly a failure of the public school system. I certainly know what was going on in our family life when my son was going through middle school and high school, and likely was not the best environment. We were a 2-income household that went to 0 incomes over the period of about 8 years. You don't try not to lose your house. You try not to get your kids shipped away to someone because you have no income. So it's a very critical, stressful time for kids and families, and all of that compounds to the kids. I think one of the things that I really am thrilled about for moving forward in the public schools is they are finally investing more in the counseling realm of the school system. It's desperately needed. So I applaud them, and a lot of that is because of the thing. We don't really want to go down that rabbit hole with what is the Kirwan Commission. I mean, thank goodness for those extra dollars for that. Yeah, no, it's a great article. I got it right here too. But yeah, I think the way kids learn is oftentimes different from the way teachers teach.
Yeah.
And the difference in that is not going to reach some kids. So how do we as a public school system address that? I don't know that I have an immediate answer, but I would be very fascinated to help work on a solution.
One thing we're doing with the chamber, with OnTrack, we're working with the guidance counselors. We'll meet them, we'll come in a room like this, and we'll have a panel of different careers, and we'll educate the counselors about what's available in Washington County to help them. Because, in fairness to them, they're in the school, and they don't get out as much because they have their work to do. And business people, private sector doesn't always get into the school to see what they're dealing with. So again, it's about bringing people together.
Sure.
What are the obstacles? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? You know, the military is a great opportunity for many people. Two of my brothers started in the military, enlisted. Both of them came out with master's degrees after starting a career there. So again, there are a number of opportunities. My first job is restaurants. I came out with a college degree, made a great living. There's GMs I worked with at Roy Rogers making $75,000 a year. They're working Tuesday through Saturday, holidays, so it's not for everybody, but there are opportunities in hospitality, opportunities in military, opportunities in law enforcement, opportunities in plumbing, electrical, that, again, if we can expose people to it, to Karen's point, how can we direct them to what's available? There are companies begging for people to apprentice with them, paying them good money, just learn the skill, learn the trade, stay with us. But we have to help them meet what those opportunities are.
Right. So in your view, both your chamber role, I guess, as well as and these things overlap, I suppose, on the track piece. Is there a function of education beyond career preparation?
Gosh, I had my 40th high school class reunion last weekend, and a number of folks have been in their careers in education over 30 years, and a bunch of them said, I can't do this one more year. It's so hard to do what I do. And so it's not about blame, it's about we put a lot on our teachers and our administrators to educate our kids, unfunded mandates, testing. So my 5th grade teacher, Stephen Nykerk, who since retired, lives in Boonesboro, so now that's 30-some years ago, 40-some years ago now, he couldn't teach today the way he taught then. He'd get fired because he didn't follow the curriculum exactly. I mean, he had kids like me who weren't paying attention or who were distracted, and he brought education to certain parts. He also taught life lessons that maybe today you can't do in school. And so I think it is a responsibility, but I don't think we give, in my view, educators enough space to help their students understand about life and the consequences of your behavior, and it's part of educating. So that's my view. Again, from 5th grader to now, it's really hard to teach in today's environment.
Caren, what do you think? Is there a role for education beyond career readiness?
I do. I think if we can adapt as a society more as life as a learning experience, that's always the way I've thought about it in general anyway. My dad used to sort of say it was a good day if you learned something new that day. And I've always sort of kept that with me because I like to learn new things. And even the struggling student in my family likes to still learn things. And it's not just because of being in school. It's whatever he may hear on a podcast or be exposed to in something he's doing. I think the kids today get bombarded with a lot of technology that sometimes can make learning overwhelming. So we adults have to learn to temper that a little bit with not just, oh, well, when I was your age kind of talk, but But being able to take that lesson and sort of apply it to the moment that the light bulb goes on. Those are good days.
I mean, we do a Teacher of the Year program with the Chamber, with WCPS, and all those folks nominated are those types of teachers. I think they teach beyond the classroom. They teach life lessons, whether it be art or science or math. They teach what it is that skill is, but they also teach how to apply it. So I like anything else, there are a lot of great teachers out there. I think sometimes they feel hamstrung or restricted about how they do things based on certain deliverables they have.
So I know you didn't mean to, but you did bring up the Kirwan Commission.
I did.
Yes, you did.
I did. It's hard to get rid of.
And you mentioned that I did bring the article with Justin Harding's interviewed from Sunday's paper. I gotta be honest, I thought he was pretty non-committal about how this was going to affect Washington County and whether it was a good thing or a bad thing and all of that, which maybe is understandable given his role in the state. But I'm hoping I can get you two to commit a little bit more. So what do you think? This is a huge price tag and some pretty major cultural shifts in education. How will it affect Washington County?
You want to go first?
You know, how do we pay for it? It's $4 billion. And I don't think money is all the solution. I think there's other things we can do. In addition to some of the recommendations, some of it is what are the priorities. But again, that's a big price tag. How do you pay for it? And what do you do without? Again, my wife had 3 daughters, and two of their husbands are in education. How do you pay for all that if you go through with this? If you believe in what OnTrack says and what other people say and what Dr. Michael is doing, focus on early childhood ed, pre-K, all day, kindergarten, because that's where you're building the building blocks. So I think if you have to have a priority, certainly that makes sense to me. And again, there's a lot of good ideas. I don't have them all memorized, but I think what are the building blocks, and where can you put the dollars that are available? Where will have the most return? Again, what I learned with my association with OnTrack is 90% of the brain development happens before the age of 5. And if kids aren't reading on grade level by 3rd grade, then they're behind unless they get, spend a lot of time, remedial time to get caught up. To me, it makes sense. Again, we're not eliminating high school, we're not eliminating middle school, but how do you get the building blocks? And really, how do you pay for it? Because if you spend all the money on what all the recommendations are, something's got to give. And something's going to give. I'm not sure what it is.
And so the price tag is largely salaries, right? Salary increases. And,
Right now.
Right. And with the idea being, let's raise the profession of teaching to a higher professional standard, more on par with other similar types of professions, which I'm sure nobody disagrees with that as a noble goal. Yeah. But as you're saying, it costs money. And I'm interested because you're saying that, well, focusing on early brain development maybe is a better place to spend that kind of money. But you also just said that some teachers are wonderful, and I think part of the reason to elevate the status of the profession is to attract better teachers, right? To make people want to go into teaching who maybe have other options that right now, because teaching is not a very highly valued profession, would choose a different option. Maybe we could get them to go into teaching and get a lot more of those really good teachers. Is that worth the money?
Well, and I think, again, my experience, talking to my classmates, money is important, and I think some of this goes to appreciation. I don't think teachers feel respected. You can make a lot of money and not be happy at work. So I think there's a blend. I think we need to probably treat our teachers differently. We need to have a little bit more respect for them, because when you look at the math, if you go to $60,000, well, then what's the retirement like? Because now you have a bigger retirement. And I could have these conversations at my dinner table because I want to see my grandkids, but, and I'm not begrudging any of this. Teachers, our kids have the summers off. They can travel. That's great. They have good benefits, we're gonna have good retirement. And so I don't think you can do everything. What's the trade-off? And so if you raise the salaries to $6,000, then do you have a 401k? And do you put money away? Do you look at the benefits? Because at some point, that money has to be paid, all of that. So again, I think it's a blend. I think it's a combination. We probably do need to pay more. I just pulled this off of something I read today. The Maryland State Education Association poll finds that 94% teachers spend their own money on school supplies. That's crazy. In any business, if you need something for your job, your company pays for it. So I think that's something we got to look at for sure. If teachers are buying their own supplies, they need it. To me, that doesn't make sense. So I think there's a blend of pay, support, morale, appreciation, because it is a profession. There's no other profession that you're successful at without being exposed to a teacher.
Right, true.
So if we don't have good teachers, we don't have good doctors, we don't have good whatever. So,
Caren, what do you think?
I definitely think elevating teachers' salaries and teachers' presence is a value, regardless of the price tag. The rest of the commission things, I think, are rooted in wanting everyone to be successful, but I think it's going to be really hard to implement as is. I mean, the 5 areas that the Kirwan Commission wants to address is certainly investing in high quality early childhood education, which Washington County has embraced, finally. Creating a world-class instructional system. We've supposedly had one here for the 15 years I've lived here. How much more world-class, or what's going to change? Be very interested to see what that is. Providing more support to students who need it the most. How are they going to derive at who that is? Like, the devil is definitely going to be in the details of this thing. And ensuring excellence for all is an accountability mechanism that I don't think the commission needs to set up another mechanism for accountability. I think there are enough within the state, whether it be the State Board of Education or teachers unions, or have everybody have a council of governments approach to it, kind of accountability, where everyone has a seat at the table. I understand accountability, and it is what needs to happen in a workplace environment these days. So, and if that means some sort of mechanism that shows whether the school as a whole is, doing what they're supposed to be doing or not sure how that's going to be coming out. I think a lot of us, myself included, when we voted in 2018 for the question 1 on the ballot about gambling funds going to education, sort of thought that this was going to make a really huge difference. And on some level, it's probably trying to, but the legislature then is going to go ahead and take that amount of money from the education budget instead of adding to it. So it's kind of like we're back to square one. So I don't know how this is all going to work. I did a lot of reporting back in the early 2000s on No Child Left Behind being an unfunded structure, and school systems were sort of floundering on how to get the proper measurements and outcomes and things documented and all of the assessments so that their percentages could be going up. And no sooner did that sort of get leveled out here that, the next thing comes around and changes it and replaces it. So I do believe that states should have control over their education system and filter that to the local counties. I don't think things can really come from on high at the federal level because it's just too diverse a country. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we want to all have the latest, greatest standards of making sure our kids learn what they're supposed to be learning that will make them successful. But having that come from on high at the federal government, I don't think it's going to work. And I'm not so sure the Kirwan Commission is going to be the thing that people think it's going to be. I mean, I would like to be proven wrong, but I'm not
reserving
sure.
Judgment on it.
I am. The funding part really threw me when I read that they're going to take that amount of money out of the budget, out of the education budget from the. I mean, why not just keep, There's no question that education isn't important investment for states to make for their citizenry. But if they're not going to make it, then they have to deal with the consequences that are going to come, which are going to be lesser educated populace. Right? So.
Well, at this point, I think I'd like to see if anybody wants to bring up anything from the audience. Yeah, Sean.
Well, you both mentioned that your organizations are 501c3s, which means you can't legislate or advocate. So what arm do you use to do that if you need to get a Kirwan change or whatever?
So it's an tax attorney in the room, they just can't advocate for candidates, they can advocate on issues.
Right, thank
They
you.
can lobby on issues.
Thank you. I thought so. Our website has.
Everybody kept talking about WCPS. Keep in mind that WCPS is doing the best they can with a county that believes in maintenance of that road.
Right.
So thank God we have the federal government telling us that our county government has to maintain a maintenance level after in the county. Or heaven knows what our county commissioners would fund those schools with.
Right. Well said, Jean.
Well, and then WCPS has its own lobbyists. We have a coalition, so we
don't have a lobbyist.
I know, but
I know, but
Caren
the public,
Cramer,
yes, the public.
Yeah.
We're not even a subsidiary.
Oh gosh.
We're our own standalone
All right.
501c3.
But I
We just
think,
happen to have Washington County Public Schools in the name because that's how it got started under Dr. Morgan.
probably the collaboration and coalitions, if there are concerns, we go, in this case, to Annapolis together. That's how I think the best way to do it.
I mean, I would like to advocate at a state level with any other school foundations in the state to take some of this gambling money funds for education and set aside for schools or school systems that represent the state at one of those national conventions. We've been fortunate enough this year and for the past several years to have numerous schools from Washington County, Boonesboro High School, other academic teams that compete and get state level, get county level, then they go to the state competition and they become state representatives. That should not come from the kids' pockets. That should not come from the kids' families. If they're representing the state of Maryland at one of those large things, the money should come from the state of Maryland, in my opinion. So one of my advocacy things, now that I've sort of been here 7 months, new fiscal year, is going to be research the other school foundations that are in the state and see if I can find common ground to get us all sort of send a letter to someone at the Kirwan or wherever commission and say, if somebody's representing the state of Maryland should pony up the money. It's not going to break the bank. But it's a pie in the sky thing. But it's an advocacy. It's advocacy that we would do. We also, if anyone is interested, we have the interim report of the Kirwan Commission on our website under advocacy. So you can print out the 400, no, it's not quite 400 pages. A lot of paper, but it is on there if any of you would like to read it. www.wcpseducationfoundation.org. So,
No longer than
I know.
What else? Questions?
For OnTrack, do you work with any other youth groups for that? Because it sounds like that'd be your prime target.
Yeah, we have Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters. I don't have them all memorized, but they're in here. We do work with a number of folks with all levels of youth, whether it be elementary school, middle school, high school. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer, I don't have all the names of them. And it's open to anyone who wants to work with us. Anyone in the community who has a desire to help with careers or students can work with us. Yeah.
We also, as part of our grant with the United Way, in our Breaking Barriers, Making Connections grant, we'll be working more closely with Boys and Girls Club, with possibly the financial literacy component, and maybe some other activities with them at their facility to help knock down those barriers.
I see if Besters are our partners. I know we do work with Bester YMCA. We work closely with YMCA. Something that came out of our collaboration. We met last fall, and we talked about the learning loss during the summer and the frustration that WCPS had with how do we keep these kids doing something over the summer so they come back and not lose it, they haven't lost ground. Well, the YMCA executive director, Maria Rublik, said, you know what? We have a lot of those kids at our camps. And there's some rainy days where we don't just let them on their iPads, do whatever, but if you have programs on they'll go on their iPads, and if you have set programs, we can use them. So again, just partnering to say, you know what? We can help you solve this problem. And again, that's just another way of talking about what are the issues. And there's probably a resource or solution that working together, we can figure it out. That's what I found over the years. So that's the benefit of working with the different groups.
John, you have a question?
Well, I have a question for Caren and one for Paul. Caren, who is the source of your funding? Is it mostly grants, private donations, and who pays for all the great stuff you do?
We raise funds, and the sources of those funds are a combination of fundraising events that the foundation will hold, some grants, but we hope to apply for more diverse grants this year. We had a lax with just the transition of former director to new director. Some of that went by the wayside, so we're going to up the grant research and capacity efforts. And private donations and corporate sponsorships are the other main sources of funding for our organization. This WCPS provides tremendous in-kind support, no financial support to the foundation. But I'm fortunate to have a room at the CES building where I can have a meeting, plug in a computer that is issued by WCPS. So my overhead is basically paid for by WCPS, which is a tremendous investment by them. But for us to do the programs we're doing, it's all private donations and grants and corporate sponsorships.
And who are some of the local corporate sponsors?
We have had Meritus, we have had Weiss Brothers, we have had USMH, we have had, so going down the level, Tiger Rock, karate school. So it's gone from all levels, big and small corporate donations. They're more. They're not coming to my brain at this precise moment. But Meritus, Weiss Brothers, and Dr. Mitesh Katari was a wonderful personal donation last year that helped supplement our Innovative Grants program. So we do rely heavily on.
Is payroll donations still a big thing for the
We
foundation?
just kicked off today the Washington County Public School Employee Giving Campaign. They tried to hold an ice cream social at CES, and less than 20 people came for ice cream. I wish I could have invited you all. It was kind of sad. Yeah, there's that. We have one fundraiser that's been in existence for 2 years called Ready, Set, Play. It was a mother-son event on a Saturday in June. We're, for 2020, going to sort of revamp it and make it more of a family fun event. Depending on the level of sponsorship we're able to secure, will derive the ticket price. We hope to be below last year's ticket price of $25 for a mom and son. And this year we have another fundraiser planned. I can't really go into any details because we'll announce it next week.
Stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned.
Excellent. Did you have a second question?
Yeah, I had a question for Paul. I agree wholeheartedly with you on the importance of internships, but I'm wondering if you could clarify a remark you made that there are a lot of businesses, I think you said, begging for interns, when I thought it was more the opposite. Interns begging for businesses.
I'll clarify, I'll
yeah.
clarify. So apprenticeships are different than internships. Apprenticeships, in some cases, apprenticeships are paid for. We have a program with the state, and we in our education foundation at the chamber, we have some dollars that will pay up to $2,000 to an employer to have an apprenticeship. As long as they work 450 hours, they pay them a minimum. So there are companies clamoring for that. There are also companies clamoring for internships, paid and unpaid. So I think part of that is educating, or I guess communicating with our higher ed, in this case, USMH and HCC and Purdue, the opportunities, but also at the high school level. I can't say at the Chamber we've had a number of high school students over the years, but we do have opportunities for internships. And I think there are internships. One in particular comes from B&D Consulting, or J&D. Jeff is his first, Jeff Bearden, J&D. They have a place out on Western Maryland Parkway. I think they have 100 employees. They do a lot of IT work. And I've been out there. We used to have high school and college students out there, in particular during the summer, doing work for him and with him. So I think there are internships out there. I think it's a matter of making students aware and also businesses saying, hey, there are students looking. So that's my experience. Yeah. So thank you for letting me clarify.
Other questions? Yeah, Joe.
I have a question, more towards the money aspect of it. You obviously, your schools are funded, that they're buying their own school supplies. I know for a fact, I spend a lot of money every year on school supplies. My wife is a PTA treasurer now from kindergarten to 7th grade. I know how much money they raise. I know that they can't buy electronics, I got that. But I know that they do buy a lot of other stuff that goes with it. So I hear all this money going in, and I don't know, maybe somebody in the room could get me on this, how much money the county actually gave, they're budgeted for the school district. I don't know. But I also read a lot of things that the school districts that were in trouble threw a lot of money at it, and that's all that happened. They threw a lot of money at it. They hired more administrators to follow different rules and everything else like that. So is it a money issue, do you think, in your opinion, or is it we're just coming up with a bunch of silly rules that these schools have to follow issue? And we're hiring administrators to follow the rules.
I think it's complicated. I'm not. I'm not in the school system to know. Just like in business, money doesn't solve all the ills. I don't think just throwing money at it. I think it's a combination. I think there needs to be more money spent. Maybe it's allocating it differently. Again, I'm not the expert on the budget. Karen's digging something out here.
I'm just looking to see if it was in one of these articles that I printed out.
You might know, Jeannie. Is it $250 million?
It's just about half of the county budget.
Yeah. So I think
but we're at half the budget. We'll say 45%, just for sake of argument. You know what I mean? So we're spending 45% of our budget on the schools. Is it a money, or is it let's get rid of some of the rules? I just want your opinion.
It's right.
Wait,
It's probably a little bit of both. So Howard County consistently has the best school system in the state.
Okay.
Howard County consistently spends more than the maintenance of effort on their school system. But, they're not just throwing money at it. They go through a fair amount of strategic planning and looking at how they're spending that money.
What percentage of their budget are they spending now? That's a big question,
I want to say the last time I looked at it, it was around 60.
Okay.
And granted, Howard County has a much bigger budget than we do too, but they also have a much larger school system. And the county in Howard County was also spending dollars on other things. They put in a $2 million promise scholarship for their kids to be able to go to their HCC for a 2-year program, despite the fact that Howard County already has an educational attainment level that's twice what the state average is. And I actually called the president of their HCC to figure out how she made that work, because we were getting no traction with our county. And she said, they have a county executive, they're a charter school. She's like, he gets it. That even if 25% the county doesn't have that kind of post-secondary, it's going to cost the county more in the long run to support those residents than it will be to get them educated. So, and we're not quite there yet.
I'm looking to see if I can find it.
Thank you.
I do think that a lot of money could be spent more smartly than what it currently is being. In my job, I have to raise money, and I get that. I'm a nonprofit. But I'm calling the same businesses that 150 other nonprofits from Washington County are calling. And some of those nonprofits are not nonprofits, but schools. I had a potential sponsor tell me the other day that because they already give to 12 PTAs and 8, back to teacher appreciation week prizes to specific schools, that they don't want to give to the foundation. I get that, but that makes my job really hard because I don't know what all the individual schools are out there looking for.
Yeah, thanks.
So, if there was a way to have more money spent from the county government and less effort by teachers and parents to have to raise money and leave that to the nonprofit, I'm not saying it's a perfect world, but I would like to someday not have to have my job because the schools have all the money they need. That would be
Understood.
great.
I mean, I'm sitting in the room right now. I mean, for me to say you're going from 45 to, for sake of argument, up to 52% of the county budget going to education, that's one thing.
Right.
But we just took 7% from who?
Right.
Right. Who'd you take it from? And that's all I'm saying. Is so,
Right.
Right. Money's an easy answer
Yeah.
a lot of times.
And it's
It
really
is
not
one of
an
your
easy
opinions.
answer.
I can't find an overall budget, but Howard County in this fiscal year, $973 million for their schools. I can't find what the county budget. I've got it there, but it's too small for my eyes to read without my glasses.
But for sake of argument, what else? I mean, I like your idea with the trades and all that.
Yeah.
What else can we do? That's all. Besides that.
It looks like according to the WCPS website for the composite budget summary for 2019, it was a composite budget of $324,710,792. County portion was $103,734,760, 31.95%.
Right.
This was year 19.
So county board was 40% of the total budget.
31.95.
39%. Yeah, there's a difference. Wow.
The state gives 58.85.
The funding paradigm for public education has certainly changed over the last 25 years. I mean, it used to be the local government had to pay the least. It's gone the other way now.
But I mean, something as silly as when you build a new school, you got to build it to the population today, not 10 years from now. I mean, that's just a silly rule. You know what I mean? You see these schools going up, and it's not made for growth, or that much growth. I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
In our county,
Yeah.
They also have prevailing wages. You have to pay more. And, that's what it's called.
sitting on the Facilities and Enrollment Committee, I can tell you that very rarely do they build a school that is already at capacity. There's usually at least 100 more seats for future growth. At least. But I may be wrong.
Growth is very hard to predict.
Yeah, growth is very hard to predict.
What else? Other things you guys want to ask about? Talk about? Comment
Just
on?
a little bit of a plug for OnTrack.
Yes.
When we first started OnTrack, there were 8 different organizations in the county that were raising funds to buy books for young kids. So there were 8 different organizations going to those same corporations and same individuals looking for money. We put them all together in a room. They are now all working together. They're using their resources more efficiently. They've teamed with the faith community, so they're actually having reading parties. Because a lot of those books that we were putting into households didn't have an adult that could read. Our adult literacy rate is very low. So it was a good idea, but we were spending all this money getting these books, and they were just going home and sitting on the shelf, and there was nobody there to read the kids. And now with the faith community, they're actually teaching the parents how to work with that. Even if the parents can't read the books, they can point to the pictures and say the words and the colors and still kind of get the kids engaged. But that has kind of helped some with that. We were all competing for the same dollars to do the same things, and none of us were doing it efficiently. So hopefully we'll at least start to use those dollars a little bit better as we move forward.
No, I want you to talk. And it looks like Paul has got a nice,
I do.
colorful booklet for anyone
right.
who wants more information about all the things that Jimmy's talking about. So if there's no other questions, I'd like to thank you guys
You're
for
welcome.
joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a very interesting conversation. And everyone, if you didn't give us your email address and you would like to, we would love to have it so we can stay in touch. I promise we hardly ever send email. And we hope to see you again in October.
If I come around, you don't take one from me.